Hi, all.
Hello. Yeah, you guys can talk. You don't have to just sit and wait. It's a coffee hour. I'm going to have my dish, so I'm going to shut my camera off so you don't have to watch me chew.
Wondering if I could move my laptop here to show a little bit of my collection. Steve was wanting me to do something tonight, but I'm not totally prepared for that. I've got a lot of my stuff in 4 different buildings, and some of my best stuff is here at my house in my radio room.
Well, if you do that, Julian, just make it a teaser. Don't telegraph the whole main event there, you know?
Oh, no. I'm wondering if I could, whoops, wait a minute, cancel, wrong one, there we go. See what happens if I pull my power plug here. See something here.
Test 1, 2.
Let me try an experiment here. I don't know how well this is working, but
it's working fine.
see if I
So far, so good.
part of my microphone collection. Okay. Get me out of the way here. Is any of that making sense?
No. It's a very crowded cabinet.
Pardon me? Say that again?
That's a very crowded display cabinet. Goodness.
Yeah. And I still have more stuff. Ugh.
Goodness me.
Now, let's see if I can do something else. Like I said, this will just have to be a teaser. I don't want to give away anything, but there's a lot to be said in here. I don't know. Does it come through okay?
Coming through, you're probably moving a little fast, so we can't
Oh, I'm
really see
sorry.
anything. Yeah.
Okay.
You got to get everybody dizzy if you move too fast.
You're right. I've sorry about that. Thank you for bringing that to my attention.
What a collection. Oh, my God.
Really? And you say this is only one of 4 buildings?
Whoops. Oh, what happens? Am I still on?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Snuck some slides off down here. But anyway, well, I've got to clean up here a little bit here. Put this back up.
I'll trade you a UHF converter for the Fedora.
Oh, that Fedora was a, I'm trying to remember the movie star that had that. He had a real big head. It's a large, extra large Fedora there. I always like hats and stuff, and got some more hats and a straw hat down there. But anyway, that's just one room in my house here.
Well, we
And
look
not-
forward to you when you do a formal presentation for us.
Alrighty. I thought that'd be a little teaser there. And it's just such a mess and everything that everything that is just so much in there that I can't show a lot of stuff to make it continuity. Oh, I gotta go in there and clean up a mess and put my power back on here. Let's see, that's the wrong one. We got that back. Put the sound back on.
We'll wait a few more minutes and then we'll start the program. Maybe wait till 6:05.
.605, you must be out west.
Yes. Sorry about that. 8:05, right? 6:05 here. Wasn't thinking.
You gave away your super secret location.
Yeah, right. Sort of thought we might have more attendees tonight because we're drawing for the grand prize, but apparently that's not a very big draw.
If you win, you win.
Is this a week later than usual?
It varies. We have had it around the third Saturday, but sometimes the fourth. It just depends upon availability of people and so forth. So it hasn't been consistent.
Well, anyway, I hope that gives anybody a little idea of what I have to go through to get in my room in there.
Thank you, Julian.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. I hope you enjoyed that. Hope you got to see it. It's hard for me without looking through a viewfinder to see exactly what you were looking at, but I think I've got an idea of which way to turn this, put this through my laptop. I've got to get a regular camera or something like that and get someone to help me with this, because it'd be difficult to holding a laptop there. And of course, you know what'll happen, your batteries will go dead in the middle of something. So, but anyway, hope everybody is well tonight.
Well, it's close enough to 6:05 and people can dribble in. So let's get started.
Let me push the record button.
Excuse me? Got it. Okay. Welcome everybody to our October meeting. I don't know how many, Dave, when did we start?
Yeah, that was a COVID thing. I guess it was last summer. I don't remember. I have to look it up. Or maybe be coming up on a year now.
Yeah, pretty close. That's we've been going on for quite a while, which is nice.
I think it was last October or November. Now that you meant, time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah, right, right.
Mm.
Why don't you worry the one you're on? Why don't you give your little pitch about courtesy?
Oh, well, all right. Just I'll try to keep the microphones muted here, but I certainly will appreciate it if everybody can keep their mic muted and unmute yourself if you need to ask a question. Don't set off any fireworks or destroy any furniture or do anything that will detract from the sound of the main presentation, and we should be in good shape.
Great. Thank you, Dave. I want to thank the New Jersey Antique Radio Club for sponsoring this meeting and providing our Zoom feed. It's very helpful.
You're welcome.
I'm just going to speak for a brief second about the museum, and then we're going to go on to a tribute of sorts to Chuck Azar, who many of you knew. And then after that, we're going to have the drawing of the sweepstakes winner, and then we'll have open discussion. So I have a big announcement. It just happened within the last couple of days. We've been talking to a guy on the West Coast who has had knows nothing about television, and but his wife's father had a collection. He died recently. And so he sent me a list and said, hey, are you guys interested in any of this stuff? And he said, I know we have a TRK-12 and a few other things. We really don't know what they are. And finally found out they do have a TRK-12 and a spare CRT, which is very nice. But the exciting thing is they have a Gilfillan G12. Gilfillan was a West Coast manufacturer, radio manufacturer that made the G12 in 1939, and it's a mirror and lid set. Looks similar to the TRK-12. Got to be the only one in existence. I had no idea it was there. So we're getting it and a couple of nice early post-war sets in addition. I'm making arrangements now to bring them out to the museum, but I'm really curious to see what's in that G12. We have a brochure that has a few details, but not much. So anyway, that's very exciting news for the museum. Anyone new that would like to introduce themselves? Well, I guess not. As I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, Chuck Azar was one of the original board members of the museum. He's been with us from the beginning. And it's just a tremendous help to the museum and foundation. He was always there at every convention. He was full of ideas and help for anybody that asked him a question. He was there. Also a really nice and interesting guy. So I thought we would start today's meeting with a short tribute to him. We're going to start with Mike Molnar, who worked with Chuck on his interviews with Vladimir Zworykin. And I think he has a PowerPoint presentation, if I'm not mistaken.
I do.
So why don't we turn it over to you and let's hear you. And then afterwards, I'd just like to invite everybody who has comments, who knew Chuck, to say a few words if you'd like to. So, but let's start with Mike.
So I'm going to go to the share screen. I think the right one here. And I have to share audio and optimize. So is this coming in?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
You know, it's many years ago that I started collecting radios and TVs and writing articles and doing presentations like this. And I've been rewarded with first learning a lot, and that I've really met some really interesting people over the years. And the ETF conferences and conventions were a great place for doing that. I mean, where else could I can remember the auctioneer Don telling stories about being the stage manager on the early Tonight shows with Don Pardo, and being kicked off because Don Pardo wanted his personal stage manager. Just really interesting stuff, and a lot of it technical too. One of the friends who is not with us anymore, Ed Raitan, was a wealth of depth of information. And I had followed him around so much, I was often surprised he didn't ask me to go sit in the car and leave him alone for a while. But Chuck Azar was certainly another one of those people. And his experience with television was extensive, and from some of the earlier days. When I first ran into him at one of the conventions, I was looking at the Motorola color set with a 19-inch screen, which was the first thing to jump up from the size of the 15. And he was right next to me. He starts poking around, and he's really investigating something around the screen. And I finally said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "Well, you know, when these were put in, a lot of them were upgraded to 21-inch because the 19-inch tube was so bad, and then some people would put a bigger bezel in so you'd get the full screen, and this one has the 19-inch bezel. I'm trying to see if it's really the 19-inch screen." And I said something to him like, well, how did you know all this? And he said, "Well, I used to do a lot of those replacements. I was one of the people that went out upgrading to the 21-inch tubes." So I started to do the math, and I figured that would have been probably in the mid to late 50s that those tubes would have been going bad. And Chuck certainly didn't look it with his energy and activities around the place. The second thing is I was looking around later, and I started to look at the color tell wheel it was running, the converter, and he commented on having installed a bunch of those back in when they had a business in Miami. So all of this is adding up to where it's kind of unbelievable that you're just standing next to a guy who's sharing all of this information. Then the next year, he was there again. I was doing a presentation that involved some information about Vladimir Zworykin. And after I was done with the presentation, Chuck comes running over to me and says, "You know, I knew Vladimir Zworykin. We were friends. And he would come over to my house when we both lived near Miami and hang around. And I have all these videotapes of conversations and interviews with him." I'm starting to say, I believed all your other stuff. I'm starting to wonder if you're going a little too far here. But sure enough, he told the story of his program called Instant Replay, and he said he had reels of tape of Zworykin coming over to his house, sitting in the backyard, and they would just talk about anything. And if I wanted to go through all this stuff, you know, he would be happy to share it. And that's what ended up happening. Let me get this on my screen. There, let's see. So, yep, that didn't do what I wanted it to do. So these are excerpts from Chuck Azar's tapes. He broke it all down to DVD for me, and handed me 10 DVDs, which it was up to me to go and find the interesting stuff. And part of the problem was that this would be a steady camera set up in his patio for a lot of it, and they would just talk, and then there'd be nothing. They'd walk off the screen. I'd have 40 minutes or an hour of the flowers on the table and the plants behind them, and I weeded through a lot of stuff. Took a while, but then we came up with this presentation from his Instant Replay video magazine. There are a number of clips that we'll look at. In the first one, Zworykin is introduced at the National Association of Radio and Television Broadcasters somewhere around 1980. And he gives a little talk about his times in the business.
When we started, I promised you a distinguished panel. And we now come to the pièce de résistance. It's my pleasure to introduce Vladimir Zworykin, known as the father of electronic television. He is, as many of you know, an honorary vice president and technical consultant to RCA. Dr. Zworykin was born in Russia, Tsarist Russia, in 1889. During his student days, he was captivated by the work of a professor who was trying to transmit images, pictures, by wire in the physics lab. Zworykin became that professor's understudy. In 1919, he came to the United States, where he joined the Westinghouse Electric Company. By 1923, he had invented the Iconoscope camera tube and the basic television picture tube. General David Sarnoff, Papa David, as we used to call him, saw the Zworykin electronic television system demonstrated in 1929 and invited him to join RCA. During World War II, Dr. Zworykin was credited with important roles in perfecting the sniperscope and the snooperscope. And I like a line in a recent profile published in Broadcasting Magazine when the reporter asked Dr. Zworykin what was his most important accomplishment. His reply, dreaming, I think. Dr. Zworykin.
Thank you. Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, I am very honored for being invited to your conference. I have listened with great interest to the previous speakers, and I have little to add to the tremendous achievements of the television broadcasting industry. Frankly, I feel like I come here to learn, not to teach somebody. So far is the progress in this field. Although in 1900, there was electric cable on the ocean floor, connected Europe and America. Marconi in 1901 set in a radio communication which was not only more reliable, but had a much wider range that the underwater cable. Some 40 years later, American ingenuity achieved transmission of the picture through the air. Our RCA team played a quite big role in this great achievement. In 1964, an NIS satellite transmitter at 22,000 miles above the Earth established the possible of global communication.
We'll get back to pick up on his speech a little later as it ties some of this together. When I went through all of this information, Chuck had done this when Zworykin was about 90, and I guess that would have been in the early 80s. And you'll see a young Chuck in some of the interviews. But I was able to break the clips into Zworykin's early days, Zworykin the Dreamer, things that he was coming up with over the years, and how at 90 he was still dreaming. His earliest days, he tells stories about his days at Westinghouse. Now, his earliest work included development of what was the WD-11 triode vacuum tube, which was a very important tube because that was what would run on a dry cell for filament voltage instead of a big storage battery, and made the earliest little one-tube home radios of the 1921-22 period possible without being too cumbersome in the home. So the production of these tubes was very slow, and Zworykin's first assignment was to increase the production of these tubes and increase their reliability and still keep the cost reasonable. And here he's going to tell about some of his experiences doing that.
What I propose to take this kind of resin, fill it with about half with resin and the mixture, and not only empty. Connect it with gooseneck this way. On the top, connect it with the vacuum pumps and with the CO2 tanks. See? In this resin, already these oxides are mixed up. So this time you can tell the girl instead of one film, make 100, and make about these rings, 100 of them. It takes her long, but not 100 times longer, you see. And then the balloons about this size, this 10-gallon of water, you see. And then you put this thing all in solution, cover this thing, put a vacuum, and evacuate the air. Then you put a note, close the vacuum, and put the CO2 pressure. See? Then the CO2 now lowers to another one, you see?
That would lift the
Yes,
resin up?
liquid, yes. And
Let the Caldwell piece do that for you.
Okay, fine. Just a minute.
then you dry it by applying the current, but in series with all of one at the same time, and only 3 seconds we usually use that. It's very easy to have stopwatch. When you use one by one all the time, every filament little different.
A little different.
And that is critical. That's it. And it worked. So it very delighted, immediately big secret out of it, put in separate room and so on and so forth. Everything was going all right. Engineers were delighted because rejection lifted from 70% to about 20%.
So he has this success going on. He's, but really, his career is kind of stuck in the WD-11 production. And then he's going to tell a little story about the bad luck of getting the flu. This would have been probably 1921 or 22, which wouldn't have been that 1918 flu, but he was taken out of action for a while. And then when he came back, what looked like bad luck of being away for so long turns into good luck.
So that was going for a few months. Everybody was did like that. Then I got flu, and the doctor put me in the bed home. After several days, he called the boss, said, "Listen, when are you coming? Because we need filming, and nobody wants to touch your thing because they are afraid." I said, "Nothing afraid, but CO2 tank, I think, is practically empty. Will you see that they change the pressure on the everything will go down, you come." So next day I come, everything all right, I tried, everything fine. So I asked the first bunch, put it that, so put it finally the current to hit the filament, the whole thing, bang, and about 6 foot plaster, I think from ceiling dropped the whole thing. I was happened to save myself because I always worked with having in left hand the big piece of asbestos thing. So I just put my head in it. Although I still have the piece of empty tank, burned fingers, but not bad. And you know what happened? I was panicked. I thought they're going to fire me. What you would expect? You just come from another country and need such thing, almost fire, because the big bomb was there. Also, I was working alone with this thing, but you know what kind of noise that whole laboratory come.
What happened?
Was, nothing. Just the most of the people come to look how it happened, and everybody asked, and a lot of people in the factory begin to know me before they didn't know me.
Oh.
So that all that when it's all cleared up, they asked only how quick can you make another one. I said sure, and we make better one because we already have so much.
What made the explosion?
Huh?
What made the explosion?
They mixed the balloons, put the hydrogen instead of the
hydrogen.
Yeah, it explode.
That explodes very good, hydrogen. You know, we talked about several things that have happened.
No, but what psychology, instead of firing me up, the director came and so on, what kind of work you would prefer to do?
Oh, that was good.
Yes, because obviously it was already working without any interruption for several months and worked good result.
So
they want to just start to work as fast as possible. And they know that I am not the right man for this kind of work.
What did you
I
ask
say
them to do?
television.
Well,
they had the session, they can talk about so on. Finally found out it's not practical. Who wants television?
Well, so his accidental explosion at least gets his name known at Westinghouse, and he is up to doing bigger and better things. And this is a little story about how they respond to his ideas for television.
23. Then the high power people living and they asked something, no, the director of laboratory asked something, they answered. I didn't hear it. So when they departed, I stuck like a leech to the director of laboratory. What did they ask? What did he answer? He said, nothing. They are commercial people, so on. So finally, I insist, tell me, show that, I like to hear. They said the highest link, they say, put this fellow to work with something more useful. I almost collapsed.
And that was
So eventually he does get to work on his ideas for television, but after RCA takes over and he's in Camden working for Sarnoff. And in his first experimental iconoscopes, he's just trying to get a 16-line image. And the target was made in one piece, and then they were trying to score it to divide it down into lines and pixels. So apparently, no matter how careful they were, they kept chipping off the edges, and doing it that way to get a high resolution picture was just seeming impossible until he gets this idea while he's shaving.
I was shaving in my room in the morning in order to go to the laboratory, and it was early in the fall. It means 1923, and it was due on the glass on the window. And for some reason, I had magnifying glass. I took magnifying glass, look, and you said, my goodness, just exactly what I want. Beautiful, so small spots, all equal. I don't know what I did. No. Very quick after that, I was in the laboratory, told boys who operate the pumps and so on, drop everything, let's do this thing. Yeah. And the same day, we have the first screen.
The same day?
They immediately start more and more of them.
And that was...
It was very uniform. All what you need to have vacuum, do not oxidize this silver. And second, when you evaporate it, arrange in such a way that you evaporate all area, about so big, all area uniform. It means quite a far distance, very high vacuum, and heat gradually. And then when we make one of the first one, we look down, no blemish at all. Beautiful screen.
Still
and for about 10 years after, all Iconoscope were made this method.
So in a later interview, Chuck asks Workin what he thinks about Farnsworth and his image dissector.
And he didn't. He did the electronic, all right. Yes. He used the beam and scanned the solid phosphorescent screen. See? And then use outside photocell and get only the electric current only when this point excited. It means several thousand times less time. Everything has the same. Yes. So if it's sensitivity, the same, and time, you will get several times, because if you have for instance, as it's now, you have for raw figures 500 spot and 500 lines. Multiply 500, 40 and 25. It means 250,000 times. Gain in time. But time is energy, right? Yes. So here it is, because my system working, he was working only for very big light and very, very slow motion.
That was another thing, the motion was his worse on motion than yours?
Yes, the same thing.
You couldn't move very fast on the image dissector.
No, it will trail.
I see. And you needed a lot of light.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay, and that was the primary difference.
And I told Farnsworth, do you think what happened? Oh, he said, I know, that science aid.
What he's trying to get at there, I believe, is basically spelling out that the Iconoscope stored charge on the parts that weren't being scanned on the image plate, where the image dissector is only getting the energy from the individual spot that's being scanned. Then he went on to explain some of his work on early color TV.
When television was a reality for you, you had made the Iconoscope. You had demonstrated the fact that you could now show a moving picture with sufficient resolution that you could see the end of the road, so to speak. You knew what was coming with it. Had you thought about color, and had you thought about the high resolution necessary for the medical fields and these other areas?
I made color that time, about 1923. I made it quite different.
How did you do that?
You remember at that time, it was color photography come up.
Yes.
Color photography was with the mosaic, with the green. The how they called? You don't. You have very good memory. German films was actual glasses, negative for color. 3 transparent colored sensitive layers.
Yes.
And that
was
emulsion.
Yes.
That's for the amateur photography. Was already in the market. So I tried this way of the using the transparency, electronic transparency of the layers. Means one is higher velocity than another one.
Using velocity
Oh,
modulation?
yes, yeah. It did work, but it was very difficult to make because you have to know good technique of the photographic film. We didn't have it. No, this thing.
This, I believe, is a copy of his working patent that tries to explain what he's talking about. You can see in where it says figure 5 that there's layers of phosphors, and in figure 3, they're showing the strength of the beam so that one would penetrate in further and excite one layer of phosphors, while the weaker ones would only excite the layers that are further back. But like you said, that really never came to play. In one little clip, he tells about what his boss, David Sarnoff, thinks about his inventor and engineer, Vladimir Zworykin.
From 1923 until the World's Fair in 1938, when the general public first saw television.
Yes, we had the television there, Sarnoff was showing to that.
Yes, but the management at RCA obviously changed their mind about the practicality of what you showed them someplace in there.
This dream.
Sarnoff shared your dream?
Yes, but he considered non-practical man.
He did? Oh, he was considered a non-practical man.
What his answer, he did that and he's remember this thing in his speeches after that. And he said, what do you think of this fellow? You think he's engineer? He's the best salesman we have. He said, I asked him how much that will be to build. And he looked on the ceiling and said, well, about 100,000. We spent so far 40 million, so we didn't get a penny about it.
He wasn't too far off, was he? 100,000
No, he
to
was
40 million.
supporting. That is the one man who pulled television.
Yes.
Oh, yes. As from commercial, he is the number one. No question about that.
So it took his support.
Yeah.
It took his support to make it.
You can judge.
It was a little confusing there, but Sarnoff often made that joke about Zworykin saying he was his best salesman because he sold Sarnoff on the fact that it should only take $100,000 to develop television, when in the end result it was 40 million. So the next part, Zworykin the Dreamer, is some of the ideas that he had that some were acted on to some degree and some weren't, but he had this idea of, during World War II about how to fight back against the kamikazes.
Using the driver and the plane, which they attack the enemy.
The kamikaze.
Yes, kamikaze. And I told our director, say, we have the kamikaze. Where we have it? I said, our tubes. You put on the camera and fly this thing. Evidently told Sarnoff, I got the call from New York, that Mr. General Sarnoff wants to see you when you come. I say today, no, today is too late, tomorrow. So I come tomorrow and tell about this thing. He said, can we go to Washington? I say, whatever you order, after all. Well, we went there. And they brought me to the highest, to the highest military people. And the fellows start to tell, they had the 15 and 16 inch. We fire 16-inch gun? I say, never did. Well, if you hear, then you wouldn't talk about glass tube having on the plan.
Well, you may.
If you didn't get it, his point there was if you're going to have a glass tube near a 16-inch gun, you're not going to have a glass tube anymore. Then he talks about developing the infrared camera in World War II.
What are other inventions that you've
Well,
that you're
military
particularly
invention, a lot of them.
I believe you were the first to propose a television camera in the nose of a rocket.
Yes. Well, one of the most manufacturing item, or rather two manufacturing items. One was the image tubes, which you can make the same as the pickup tube, but in infrared. You see?
That led to the snooperscope, I
You
guess.
see the picture right away, but invisible. One time with Dr. Morton, who was working with me at that time, we were testing that near Princeton at night without light, and were arrested during the war. We have to call a lawyer from RCA to get out.
They thought you were a peeping Tom?
So obviously they weren't peeping Toms and got released from jail. But then there's another invention that found some unintended uses in World War II.
Another one was used in Navy very much. Another one is the funniest one. It's a good example that sometimes inventions are not used to what that's invented, but it's just opposite. We invented this image tube, and we're making them, but nobody wants to use it. Actually, we plan to use that also for talking movie. Instead of moving the light, like they're doing now, we just do that with the cathode ray tube. And worked all right. But when the commercial people evaluate, we have their several steps: invention, research, pre-production, or several steps before production. Pre-production means in large scale, and then production. All right, when they made this pre-production and evaluate how much it costs, it found out that several cents more than this mechanical thing that they used. Because that was already developed to use in oscilloscope, mechanical oscilloscope. And therefore, that was out. Then later on, Navy people come and said, no, first of all, Lawrence come. You know,
Dr. Lawrence?
Yes, from
Lawrence Livermore Lab?
Yes, San Francisco.
Yes.
And he said, we heard about this thing, we can use to separate the particles. Where we can get the tubes. I said, you can't get any because they manufacture, but if you will take this tube, put in your pocket, you are welcome. And tell me if you need more. We have several already made, we don't have any use for that. He did. After that, we were supplying them for end of the war. Until.
What did they use them for?
Because certainly they made secret. I tried to find out where is the secret, what's the use of that.
They wouldn't tell you?
Don't laugh what I tell you. After the war, probably 2 or 3 years, come young lieutenant who was working with all these things for Navy. And he wants special equipment, we discussed. Then I asked him the question. I said, listen, I know that we have special factory in Camden using measuring tube, this image tube. And I know they are not used for anything because it's more expensive than mechanical. What for they used for Navy? He said, you will be laughing. I said, what? Can you tell me? Yes, now it's possible to produce interference for the radar.
Oh, they used it to make interference?
Yes.
How did that work?
For the enemy radar.
Yes. What, the tube generated noise?
Yes, because it produced so many vibration there.
Oh, very high frequency.
Make a mess.
I see.
Instead of focusing.
I see.
See what happened?
Also, way ahead of Google, Zworykin was working on a driverless car on a test track at the RCA labs in Princeton.
You know, like the circular saw.
Yeah.
Attached to the truck and just
make a hole. No, I don't mean. I mean, how did it work after you had the wire in and drove the car?
Wire very easily. You generate the signal by the car, and then interfere with the wire which is in the tube and reflect the result.
And what would it do? It would slow the car down? or
Well, the General Motor put it in the car.
Yeah.
for us,
And what did it do in the car?
Completely nothing, sitting and looking.
And it would turn the car,
Yeah.
slow it down,
Yeah.
stop it if another car were in front of it?
Yeah.
And the only negative problem was the road people didn't want to put it in the road?
Road, that is not, if it would be made entirely in the car, then it's all right. But if that depends on the administration who build the roads, you know, the road is one of the biggest
You worry about
of the biggest income of the
politicians.
politicians.
Sure.
So that didn't work out, but he did move on to developmental work on the electron microscope.
How about the electron microscope? What?
Electron microscope was a regular tube. We used it a lot ago before we tackled to use for microscope. We used that by applying different potentials. Suppose you have cathode tube in vacuum. We start with vacuum. So you have filament, then electron optics and fluorescent material, right? Now, suppose you change the potential distribution. Instead of the optics can be reversed the same way, like if you had the grid and project with the light on screen, you will have a larger screen, right? Now, suppose you invert, suppose you have a very bright screen and the same focus, and instead of the what the first time, instead of source of light, you use fluorescent material and a magnifying glass. You will see already the enlargement. By using the optical magnifier, you have double enlargement. And at that time, we already knew this fundamental thing, which I admit I didn't know until we started this work. That resolution depends on the velocity of the particles. Now, for instance, ultraviolet picture, it has more resolution than the visual picture or infrared.
Because of the size of the particle?
Because velocity is higher. Electron velocity has the number of volts applied, right? So it means comparing with light, it's about 100,000 times. And 100 times it should have the resolution. When we had free time, we invert that, we look at that, and so going. Then I organized the group special for electron microscope. It was done a lot of work with this thing. It's not so easy to prove the thing. It works. It's easy. Maybe one day you have equipment.
But to make it work.
To make it, it takes months or years. And Hillier did the excellent work.
Who's that?
Dr. Hillier, who was one time director of a laboratory.
For RCA?
I got him from Toronto. He was doing research work there.
I did not get enough from that to build my own electron microscope. But we'll move on now to part 3. Vladimir's working at age 90 and still dreaming. And he was always critical of commercial program content on television. It didn't live up to be the tool that he wanted. And he was known for having a RCA TV in his home, but he never used it. So let's see what he says on some of this.
Any idea that this is what it was going to end up as?
Listen, what is our speech for? Million years ago, the humanity developed the speech in order to communicate with different members. What's television for? To improve this communication. And what is they for? Use it now.
They don't use it for that.
So when he gives a statement applauding the introduction of home video tape recording, which he thinks would be able to supply educational material and save TV from the commercial broadcasters.
It gives me great pleasure to thank you for the creation of this new and exciting use of television. I have been using a video tape recorder for just short time, and the ability to select programming that is desirable at the time that I want to see it gives television a new dimension. Television was never democratic, and that the creative process was not available to everyone. And with home video, that has been changed. I thank the member of ITA for making my dream available to everyone.
So Chuck comes up with this idea to encourage more quality TV programming. He and Dr. Zworkin are going to plan an award for the industry for the people that most live up to Zworkin's idea of what television could be, and it was going to be named the Icon.
I want to discuss with you the Icon Award, the award that we've decided to give in your name for television programming. The date that we want to give this award is the date when you first created television. Because at that time is when, from that point on, is when people should have been thinking about how to make programming for it.
All right, that will be very good move in the right direction. I agree with that with you.
And we'll make it open to producers and to even the networks, the programmers, the people, anybody at all who takes the energy and the time.
And the program tied up to certain age.
What's that?
To certain age program.
To certain age.
Age, yes. For the kids.
Yes.
For grown up. For grown up.
Oh, in different categories.
Yeah,
you mean?
different categories.
Yes, because it would have to be
Yes,
different.
that will be much easier to pick up the program, and will be more useful that way.
Well, of course, too, with videotape, which is my field, the ability not only to watch a program is important, but to watch it over and over again, you see.
But why? It will be maybe very good commercial thing, because it will be both not only speaking television, but television for purpose.
Yes.
Right now they don't have the purpose. Everybody look all kind of trash.
Yeah.
There.
Well, the purpose is to sell advertising.
Yeah.
Obviously, Dr. Zworkin didn't watch Gilligan's Island. So at 90, he's still optimistic, and he's going to tell his dreams for the future of television.
What do you think the next 50 years are going to bring us? What are the fields that you feel are most interesting for new inventors, for people who want to spend their lifetime creating ideas that can help man?
Well, you mean field?
Yes.
Or application?
Both.
Well, application, I think, enormous. You know, the thing is going this way. It started with the television, essential, but now used for everything else. Computer, for instance, have anything with this thing. And a lot of other applications, printing, typing, and whatnot, hundreds now. The only thing which are already show commercial possibility, their practical use, they're all, most of them invented, but they're waiting when the commercial, that is the application. Now the invention, they opened a new field of the transmitting of the information, and maybe for improvement of humanity. Because I think better contacts and closer contact we will have among the international reputation. I think less chance will be for wars, and faster will be the improvement of the human beings, if you want to make it a general thing.
So, and now we'll close with that last part of that speech that we saw at the beginning, where Zworkin basically is passing the torch on to the next generation to take television and communication into the future.
All my life, I've been dreaming, and now at the age of 90, I dream of the next step in global communication. In Miami, at the satellite conference just a couple of weeks ago, I saw people viewing directly transmissions from South America, United States, and Europe via satellite. The worldwide reception of television is now a reality. This, coupled with the present-day speech recognition and language translator capability, bring a dream of the worldwide communication translated in one's own language on an instant basis, a practical present-day reality. Why not start now with this organization of program produced and present some meaningful program for all countries to view and hear simultaneously in their own languages. Why not start now with this organization? I'm sorry, repeating. Could not such an accomplishment bring a better understanding and peaceful relations among the many national groups in which in this speck of the universe called Earth? It should. Let us hope, and it will. And let this to be, gentlemen, a challenge for all of us for 1980. Thank you.
So that was the end of our presentation. And I had to admit after that Chuck Azar really did know Vladimir Zworykin. And his instant replay show did put a lot of this together. A couple other things about Chuck. As time went on, I got the opportunity to consult with Chuck. Went to his house, beautiful horse farm at the time in Bucks County. Met his wife, and he had a great close family relationship. And I learned some of his other ventures over the years. The instant replay, he did many interviews that were sent to MTV, where he interviewed early rock stars, where he has a very vast collection of interviews with some before and someone where they were recently famous. He had all kinds of ideas. He at one time was running a little business to make jewelry on demand. You could go into a place and draw what you wanted, and electronically he would send images, and in a short time a piece of jewelry would come back. He had a number of patents over time, including for a video magazine, where they would send out a magazine on videotape. You'd have an index and some invention that would find the article that you were interested in, and you could it would automatically seek it out on the tape. And he had a few other inventions that were patented over the years. He built a early version of a TV into a car using it would have been the vintage of a 7JP4 picture tube, he told me. And he also tried to convince the Florida Motor Vehicle Board to let him put one of those wires in something in the Florida Turnpike so that cars could be tracked along. Obviously you didn't get very far with that. But the big thing about Chuck that I'll always remember is that he was someone who would have these ideas and pursued them. His career went from swapping those picture tubes back in the 1950s all the way to the Chuck that we knew that could restore a TV from whatever vintage and knew everything about it from having had firsthand experience. So I'll certainly miss him, and I'll turn it back to you guys.
Thank you. That was really interesting. I'd like to open it up to anybody who knew Chuck to comment, say whatever you'd like. So just chime in if you've got something to say in remembrance of him.
I could throw one more thing in, if you like.
Sure.
He was also the first to help you carry something really heavy, even when he was in his 80s. He was right there. There was one of the auctions where I bought a set, and he came over and was telling me where I could easily find all the, what other models use the missing knobs, and where I could get a transformer if the transformer is bad, because he knew what similar products in that line. And then I'm getting ready to put it in a car, and he was the first one to grab a corner, and off we went. Certainly, most of the time had a lot more energy than I did.
I agree with you. I had the same experience with him.
He's also was big at with the Delaware Valley Club. I'd often see him at the Kutztown radio meet, and I don't know how active he was with radio club things, but he was certainly a member there and knew most of the people.
That has to be one of the most exciting interviews I've ever seen. I can't recall I've ever seen an interview with Dr. Zworykin, period. You just see pictures of him, but I didn't know that material like this existed, which is outstanding. Thank you for bringing it.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
I often wonder that there might have been a lot of things with Zworykin that after all those years in the country, he still managed to keep a thick accent. So sometimes I think that makes you the mysterious inventor that people wonder. In a lot of that, he was pretty hard to understand. And when we did it at the, I think it was the 2017 convention, if I remember the date on that. And the acoustics in the room and his voice combined to make it about unintelligible. So I hope it came across better this time.
If Dr. Zworykin were still living today, what do you think he would think about our cell phones and 6-year-olds carrying them and texting back and forth?
I think, like most people, everyone would think it's gotten worse, not better.
I agree. I agree.
I saw him on an interview one time, and they said, Dr. Zworykin, what is the most important part of a television receiver? And he said, Davich. And they said, excuse me, Davich, so you can turn the damn thing off.
I remember when they referred to television as the vast wasteland in the 50s. And to say about videotape, well, videotape is what put pornography over the top. I mean, they were saying that just about every house in America was getting some of those tapes at one time.
Well, his argument was certainly that it made television more democratic, that he said there, that more people would have access to producing things than just the 13 channels that everybody saw. And
well, he sure was right about that.
Yeah, just somehow big money gets in, and it's not for the better of mankind.
Well, some people watch YouTube and they don't watch television anymore, and you can learn just about anything on YouTube now. So he was just a little ahead of his time.
Some of what you learn isn't true, of course.
Steve,
Yeah.
I have a prototype Iconoscope tube that I've got some years ago that came from the RCA labs. Would it be inappropriate to show it if I can dig it out real quick? A little hand-built
No,
thing that
sure.
give me a moment here. Let me go to my pile here. Let me find this.
I have an unbuilt image orthicon kicking around somewhere. I'll have to drag that out and show it one of these days, like an image orthicon kit that I will clearly never assemble.
Does anybody have or ever seen a Heathkit television?
Certainly the color
Oh,
ones
yeah.
are around.
Yeah.
I built one color set.
Yeah, I built one about 1975, and a couple of times came home and found the dog watching the TV and couldn't figure out how it was turning it on, but it had 4 big square buttons on the bezel for on off and volume and so forth. And we finally figured out that when somebody would come to the door, the dog would walk over past the TV and his big tail would wag and hit those buttons and operate the set.
They became famous for the way that veterans would get a free color TV, that you could use your GI Bill to take a course in electronics, and that ICS schools would send you the Heathkit color TV, and by following those instructions, you're able to apparently learn how to service televisions. But I think that was eventually stopped as being just a government ripoff.
The virtual image behind me, the test pattern is displayed on my Heathkit GR2000, which is still operating today.
Julian, why don't you show the tube?
Okay. It has a date on it of October 31st of 1940 on that little red sticker there. You can see this. And it's just a small, I'm not sure exactly what they had in mind with this, but anyway, I have another prototype that's a larger tube there, like the ones you're accustomed to seeing. But this was some kind of an experimental tube there in the development of what they were experimenting with these iconoscopes. I don't know if they were trying to do something with infrared or what, but anyway, it's the neck and everything's about the same size, but it's just the head of this. It has all little electrodes going around it, all around the top. And this came out of the labs up there. I've also got an image orthicon tube with a part that's annealed to the front of it. And I don't know if it was for night vision or if it was for infrared thing. I don't have it here. It's at my other building. But I just thought, in retrospect of what we saw tonight, I thought this might be an interesting piece to show.
Well, thanks, Julian. We need to move on to the drawing of the grand prize. And then after that, which will only take a couple of seconds, after we've done that, then we can get back to a general discussion. I have on my screen, okay, and I just clicked their random number generator. And the winner is Bruce Graham of Winter Garden, Florida. So I'll be notifying him shortly as a choice of the CT 100 or $2,500 in cash. So congratulations, Bruce, if you're out there. If not, you'll hear about it tomorrow.
How did the museum do on this?
Oh, I should have mentioned that. We sold almost $14,000 in tickets, which is a record.
That's great.
Yeah, which is really good. Especially since we've been doing the same thing with the same prize for the second to fourth year. So I'm very pleased with that. All right, anybody, floor is now open for anybody that wants to talk about anything.
Yeah, I'd like to say something about the Iconoscope development. That interview is the first I heard about Zworykin's inspiration for the plate manufactured by forming droplets of silver, because he saw droplets of steam while he was shaving. That's really quite a story. I've also heard that the first attempts to make those targets were not successful until a technician accidentally overcooked one of the targets, which turned out to be the temperature profile that would actually make sure the silver droplets were separated and insulated from each other. And I wonder if anybody else heard that story.
No, but that would make sense.
If there's any interest, Steve, I responded to that question at the last meeting about the it's a little off topic of Zworykin, of course, but bisector camera, and put it in a little presentation, a short presentation. If you are interested, I could go through that briefly some point in tonight's presentation.
Sure. I've also posted that on our website, but it's real short, and I think people will be interested if you have it ready.
I think I can call it up. Let me give it a shot here. If Dave Sika can transfer me to presentation mode or something, I've got the PDF up on the screen here, but let's see, I need to.
All you have to do is click the share screen icon, George.
Okay, let me see if I can get to that.
Should be hiding in plain sight somewhere right there.
Okay. I'm trying to get back to the Zoom screen so I can do that. It's trying to call up another instance of Zoom. Well, shoot. Okay, I think we're getting there. All right, I'm going to share screen. Host disabled participant screen sharing.
Shouldn't be. Oh, you know what? Yes, I had to shut it off because Mike got to stop sharing his screen. Let me turn it back on. You're good. Nothing's ever easy.
All right, does that get it?
Yep.
All right, terrific. Okay, so won't take long here. So I looked into this camera thing, and this is a classic boiler water tube where you have amount of water in this glass tube that sits in the boiler, and you're trying to understand how much water is above these heat tubes, and you don't want it to fall below those heat tubes. That's sort of like having the rods in your nuclear reactor exposed, and they get really hot. So you've got to keep water above the heating tubes, but you don't want to overfill it and all that kind of stuff. So if you let it get too low, though, they can blow up. We don't want that. So very interesting thing. Back in the 30s, a British guy invented this thing. The problem is it's hard to see the water level in that glass tube because it steams up in the top part where there isn't water. So it's hard for an operator sometimes to tell where the water level is in that glass pipe. So this guy in England in the 30s said, well, I can tell you that light going through water refracts. And we know that when you stick a straw in a glass of water, but if it goes through steam, it doesn't refract. So he built this gauge that used a prism somehow, and it has multiple stages. And so when the light is going through steam, it's green. It's red. And when it goes through the water, it's green. And it makes it very easy to see that where the water level is. And so Diamond Power built a number of these based on the British technology from the 30s. And here's a picture of one of them and how it would be attached to a boiler. So it has these little windows that are designed to light up red or green. So it's green when you're going through water and red when you're going through steam. And they're pretty tall. They can be, up to 21 inches high for these gauges. And it says that this one in the picture that Diamond Power made these to operate up to, gosh, I forget what it is, but enormous water pressure. 3,000 psi up here, and read the water gauge. And then here's another couple of ways that you can configure them by stacking them, to get more resolution on the water level in the boiler. And that's again from Babcock's and Wilcox. And this is another picture of the Diamond Power company's device. This is a newer, there's no water. So this page was from the hope you're still reading me here. This was a page right off of the ETF website, and it was written by this guy, Don Stevenson, who I guess, Steve, sent you the camera or some information on it. But he talks about the fact that the intent was this thing to be looking at a water gauge, and they rotated the system 90 degrees. So it's scanning up and down because its job was to look at the water gauge on a boiler. So that's right off your website. And so then this is a patent I found from 1947 by Diamond Power Specialty. And you can see they have a image dissector viewing a water level gauge. And their idea is to remotely read this gauge on a TV screen somewhere. And that was filed in 1947. And this is again from the early television website. This was a Popular Mechanics article. And this is the monitor like you have in the museum, and you can see it's in the picture. There's two stacked gauges, just like up here in the drawing, with a camera pointed at it. And here's another picture of that from the Popular Mechanics. Plus, this is a picture I found in a book called Closed Circuit and Industrial Television by Ed Knoll. And you can see, again, the picture of that funny-looking water level gauge up here on a monitor that looks like the one that you have in the museum, the Diamond Power CRT. And apparently it's kind of dangerous even to have somebody parked in front of these gauges and watching them all the time, because they can explode and you wouldn't want to be in the line of fire. Here's another picture from Electronics magazine in 1950 showing a boiler installation somewhere. Here's the water level gauges like we showed over here on this side of the room. And then over here is one of these cameras. Now, this article was written by somebody from Farnsworth Company. And there's another view of one of those Utiloscope monitors and a power supply, it looks like, mounted somewhere. I'd hate to be the repairman to have to work on that, but that's how they set it up. So there was a patent that Diamond Power took out on this, that one I showed you the picture of. And in the description of that, the guy, James Good, said that he chose the image dissector for this because it could be made like a photocell, sensitive to a particular color. So they could make it more sensitive to red than green, and they could get good discrimination between the red and green indicators on a Blackburn style water gauge. And he said in his patent that he tried to use Iconoscope, but it couldn't distinguish between the red and green. It was more of a monochromatic type system with the storage tube. So he says in his patent, ordinary television apparatus will not present an image that permits distinguishing the red and green. And so he chose the image dissector for this application, at least for that reason. So what's going on, very simply, is the gauge looks like this. It's got red lights and green lights, and that's what a human would see. But on the black and white display, you'd like to show black where there's no water and white where there is water. So what they did was, since the image dissector is most sensitive to red, video is going to be high level for the red and low level for the green. So they inverted the video. So it's just the opposite on the black and white display. It's white down here representing water and black indicating no water, so for the operator. And that's all there is to it.
Thank you. That's a very thorough. I think we thoroughly understand that camera now. It's very nice.
So pretty simple. All right, I'll return the control of your television to you if I can get back to that page, or maybe Dave can unshare it. Dave, how do I unshare? You got it. Okay, good.
I did it.
Thank you. Good for you. Thank you very much.
There was some mention earlier about the old Motorola 19-inch sets that were being converted to a 21-inch. Has anybody ever done that? And in reference to that, I remember when Motorola was making that 23EG P22, which was a pretty bad tube there at the time, that I converted 2 of those sets to that. And I never want to do that again. That took me a long time to get that thing to fit right and get it in there. Plus those Motorola chassis use those wafer type tube sockets in it. They never aged well either. And anybody ever change one out to a larger screen? Anybody have a comment on that?
Anybody else have anything on their mind they want to talk about?
Has anyone ever seen or know about a TV where the remote control was mechanical? It's like us compared to a Jew's harp that when you activate it, it vibrates. There's another mechanical thing in the TV that must resonate with it. And when that happens, it just goes to the next channel.
It's called a Xena Space Command.
Okay. I heard a thing, I guess it's true. They said they had a child that when the child screamed, it would change the channel. That was part of the entertainment, I guess.
We had one when I was a kid. it was ultrasonic. I guess I was never able to scream at that high pitch, but there were little xylophone type bars inside that a little hammer hit, and you couldn't hear it. Even as a kid, I couldn't hear it. The frequency was too high, but there were 2 or 3 or 4 different frequencies that it would generate, and it would do, channel up, channel down, volume up, volume down, and it did work.
And
I thought the Zenith Space Command was pushed air through a whistle of some sort.
No, that I don't think they ever used that. That was General Electric or something. Zenith started out, of course, with a flash-o-matic, which was basically a flashlight, and then they invented the Space Command, had little aluminum rods in it that when you push the button, it would strike it like you're striking a musical instrument, sort of. And I did have one customer tell me that when they'd open up a can of beer, you remember the old tabs that you had, that instead of the things, every time you pull a tab, the TV would change channels. And I did have another one where it was ultrasonic. We had to call the security company to see if they could change the frequency of a burglar alarm system they had in the house, because it would interfere with the TV set. You couldn't change the frequency of the ultrasonic thing in the Zenith set. So the security company was actually able to change the frequency of the burglar alarm system. I've had that happen before, but yeah, they kind of evolved there.
I was going to say the best story that I heard about the TV remote controls is one of the guys in our club said when he was a kid, they had an old black and white TV, and it was getting kind of flaky, and the horizontal hold would go out, and you'd constantly have to be adjusting the horizontal hold, and of course the horizontal hold control was in the back of the set, so it was a real pain to keep the picture adjusted on the screen. And he said his dad was too cheap to call the TV repair guy to get it fixed. So what he did was he put an eye hook on the side of the set, and he got a 10-foot long dowel, and he stuck it through the eye hook, and then he ran a rubber band over the end of the dowel and wrapped it around the horizontal hold control. And then he could sit there from across the room, and he could turn the horizontal hold control at the back of the TV. And apparently it worked.
Semi-automatic AFC.
Yeah, those ultrasonic remotes were annoying because they would pick up stuff that they weren't supposed to. Like if you dropped silverware on the table, they would pick that up. And Heathkit I built had ultrasonic remote, and so that time when we found a dog watching TV, our first thought was that it was his collar clinking. We rattled the collar every way we could, and that didn't trigger it.
Where I live, someone else.
No, go ahead.
Okay, where I lived, we had one VHF channel and 3 UHF channels, and we would buy a UHF converter, but because it didn't have UHF on the TV. Yeah. So what you did was you took the UHF converter and put it by your chair, and ran the twin lead over to the TV, so you could sit by your chair and change among those 3 channels for remote control. Anybody else get into UHF converters? Do they have those around?
Here in Knoxville, Tennessee, we had 3 channels. We had 610 and channel 26. And the Zenith sets that had that gold tuner, as they call it, you could pull the strips out of the tuner. You could put a channel 26. You could order out a channel 26 strip and put in there that it would be in the 2 through 13 bracket there. And then that was, I remember that. up until about the late 60s there. And I remember another story, you know, kind of what he was talking about, the guy putting a dowel on his TV set. I was adjusting a set in a lady's house. In the old Xena sets, you could adjust the vertical linearity and the height control from the front. You had to have a long, thin screwdriver to get to it. Well, in adjusting the set, I started flipping the vertical hold control, and a woman was watching me, and she said, wait a minute. She said, can you back that up? I don't like that picture. I like the one that I saw before. And I thought she was just playing with me. So I thought, well, I'll just play along with her. And I flipped the vertical, and you could get where the picture would roll kind of slow. And I said, now you pick out a picture you like there, and I'll stop it on it. We'll lock it in. And she said, I like that one. And she was happy as a clam. I mean, she actually believed that. So I gave her the picture she asked for and never had another service call from her.
Well, that was like when the vertical hold would be rolling like that. People would say the TV's jumping. You know, that's what's wrong with it. It's jumping. And I know we had the same thing with a Zenith where the horizontal wouldn't sync. And my job to go when I was about 10 to go keep doing that, you know, and get back and sync like that. And then when my father went to got called to get it repaired, he'd say, what's wrong with it? He says, it's flubbed up. And the repair guy didn't know what he's talking about, but I understood it. I didn't know why the guy repairman didn't understand why he didn't know the term flubbed up with this thing. But we had this. Go ahead.
I was just going to say the museum has a very nice collection of UHF converters on display.
Don't need another one. We had another use for them when HBO Home Box Office came out. It was just in between channel 5 and 6 or 4 and 5, something like that. And that's all it was. And if you took a TV with a UHF converter or UHF on it, you could feed the UHF from the converter into the UHF of the TV and take the VHF and put it to the cable and tune in that in between those channels and get your HBO. So a little trick that went around for a while until, of course, I got upgraded and changed. You know, to something else.
I got a UHF converter that's kind of special, at least to me. Let's see if I can put the picture on the screen here. That's that's me holding my pretty garden variety, common as dirt, blonder tongue UHF converter in the middle there, but it was signed by Blonder and Tongue, who were members of our club there in the picture with me. So that's that's kind of a special. That's a never going to be for sale item, and for me anyway.
Yes, I have one just like it. Nobody signed it though.
Well, I hear they work better if you get them signed. I'm not sure. Let's see. Now I got to remember how to shut that off. There we go.
Has anybody ever changed out a picture tube in the home? Where you didn't have
just a regular picture tube, black and white.
Like a 25 XP22 or a 25 or a 25 VAP22. I used to change for especially Zenith. I always liked Zenith sets because they were easy. But
I don't remember what they were, but I changed a few of them when I was a teenager, and I go right in the house. What I did was put it on its face, you know, face down, you know, to take it out of there, everything. And I remember getting a hold of a picture tube much earlier. I was again about 10. And we thought they would explode, you know, and we threw them somewhere. So we went someplace where there was like a cliff. We threw it off. We ran. We thought it'd blow up or something like that. I don't know what happened to it, but nothing. We didn't get any result. But they didn't break that easy.
There's one thing that you never do with a picture tube that's pressure banded. That you never take a hacksaw and try and cut the pressure band off of a live tube, because it will go kaboom. I learned that when I was working for Paul Mercer here in Knoxville. We had a picture tube rebuilding plant here. But some years back, I used to have sort of a walk-in TV service at the flea market in the late 70s through the 80s there. And this other guy came in selling used TV sets as well, and I always called him Brand X. He wasn't much of a technician, but he tried, and he'd come over once in a while and have me help him. One day, I was over on the other side of the flea market. All of a sudden, I heard this kaboom, and I know what that kaboom means. And I went running over there to see what he had done. And he's sitting down there on the floor, practically on his back, going like, "What happened? What happened?" And I said, "You tried to cut the pressure band off of a tube, didn't you?" He was trying to put a one picture tube that when the pressure band tubes had put ears on it to mount the tube. Well, he was trying to cut the ears off of it, and that didn't work, so he cut the pressure band off. And let me tell you, there were chunks of glass laying all around there, and there were customers in the flea market running every which way direction. They thought a bomb had gone off. And I said, let that be a lesson to don't you ever do that again. And I had another instance one time that there was an invalid lady that was bedridden, and she had an old Zenith with a 25 XP in it. And that set, the picture tube was so bad in it that you could only see a dim blue picture, and that was it. There was no red, no green, just a dim blue. Well, in their living room, they had a similar set with the same picture tube, and the tube in it was usable, but it needed to be replaced. So I told Charlie, the guy that I worked for, I said, "I've got an idea. When I pull the tube out of the living room set and put the new one in it, why don't I, for an extra $30 charge there, take the other set apart and switch picture tubes and make a more usable set out of it, and turn that tube in as a dud?" And he said, "Yeah, go ahead." Well, about a couple days later, she called, and she was carrying on, complaining about how I'd messed up her TV set. And what had happened, the 6JU8 tube in it had gone bad, and the color oscillator dropped out. I don't know how she could ever tell the difference, but she says, "I don't know what they messed with my TV for. It was working perfectly," and all of that. I mean, you couldn't even see the picture on it. So I guess it's all subjective there of what people look at, and lives of a TV repairman, I guess.
Good turn goes unpublished.
Yeah.
Well, folks, I'm going to leave you. The meeting's going to be open for quite a bit longer for people who want to continue to chat. It was a great meeting, nice presentation, and hope to see you all next month.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Wonder if I could get a question into Dave. Mentioned Blonder and Tongue, and did you get a chance to chat with those guys much? There was the infamous Blonder Tongue doctrine of the log periodic antenna patent being overturned. Just seems like legend. And any insight there?
Got a chance to talk to them a lot, but they were both really, really smart guys, and I was not. So they talked about a lot of things that I didn't understand at all. I don't know that ever came up in conversation, though. Sorry.
Yeah, that seems to be legend of patent law as well as TV antenna law.
They were interesting guys, though. I know that in their second career, in their second childhood, they got into interesting things. Ben became one of the world's leading experts on crystal radios, and Isaac spent years chasing the Loch Ness Monster. A friend of mine worked for Ike also in one of the UHF stations in New Jersey here. They did experimental 3D television broadcasting, and Ike was telling me one time about a system that he had developed to broadcast 3D HD TV in only a tiny bit more bandwidth than regular SD NTSC took up, and he actually explained that to me. He dumbed it down to the point where I could actually understand it, and he actually could do that. Amazing guys, very smart guys, both of them.
That's interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, I knew Ben Tongue with audio,
and he used to.
Oh, the equalizer.
Yes, he invented the graphic equalizer, the Blonder tongue audio baton, he called it.
I don't think he invented the equalizer, but he was very, very proud of that machine because that machine did equalization of the audio band with no phase shifting. That was what he invented.
Yeah.
Didn't create any phase distortion.
Yeah, beautiful unit because of the color bands across the face of it. He had a very interesting collection of early electrical phonographs, including every one of the early Victor automatic changers, which were amazing to watch. He had them all of them in operating condition.
I'm going to put a picture on the screen if I can find it here real quick. Ben was also quite charmed by the fact that he was nearly famous, and there was a punk rock band out, which they called themselves they made an album called the Blonder Tongue Audio Baton, and he said it wasn't exactly his cup of tea for music, but he thought it was pretty funny.
We had.
And, I was going to say, I told an interesting. I got a bunch of recordings. We used to do presentations, at the local club, and I'll send a link out for some of them. When Ike got up there, he just told he had us on the floor laughing with his stories. One of his jobs early in his career was a quality control in a factory that made radios, and he developed the NWT test, which was very important when they were doing the final quality control on the radio sets before they would go out to the public. And that was it involved a hammer, and it was the noisy when tapped. And if they didn't pass the NWT test, they had to go back and get worked on again. He had a million stories like that.
We had one engineer at the lab who called the Blonder tongue equipment peroxide gargle.
I'm not sure I caught that. Yeah.
It's peroxide gargle.
Will that work for COVID?
No, but it gives you a blonder tongue.
Oh.
Actually, I'd like to know more about the proposal for HD TV, because I'm not sure I remember something from them in the early proposals in the early 90s.
Well, the way Ike explained it to me, and I could be misremembering this, and I could be filtering it through my non-engineer mind, but he did some experiments which I personally saw them borne out. He realized that you could show a high definition image to one eye, and like the left eye, and you could show the right eye the right image for 3D, but you could show it in SD, and your brain will put it together as a stereo HD image. And that absolutely did work. And that was his plan to revolutionize the television industry. But of course, nobody wanted to listen to him.
Okay, I do remember that now, but the shortcoming was that people weren't necessarily looking for 3D, and so it was a good method to squeeze left and right eye images into a standard channel, but it really wasn't doing much for enhancing resolution beyond NTSC.
Yeah, he had I think his 3D broadcasting station. I know a buddy of mine worked there for years. I don't think it ever went anywhere. People just, as usual, had no real interest in 3D television. I tuned it in one time, but without the glasses, it was just a mess.
Well, we thought if we just monkeyed with the convergence and got it off a bit like that, and then put the glasses on, we would get 3D. It didn't work out though.
Can anyone hear me?
Yes.
Does anyone remember around 1990, there was some technology called IDTV, Improved Definition TV. It was an experimental thing. It didn't take off, but it did look better than conventional NTSC.
This was RCA's Sarnoff Labs proposal for improved definition TV. And there was a lot of work done on it, and it was one of the, I think, 13 different improved definition ideas that were, let me back up, 13 different ideas for analog improved TV. But I know the guy who was in charge of the whole project at Sarnoff, and his telling of the story after it was dropped was that the artifacts were always a problem, and they had a optimistic schedule of reducing the visibility of the artifacts by a certain number of dB per month. And they never could find a compromise between the strength of the auxiliary signals that caused the artifacts and the noise level of the auxiliary signals, which ruined their system. So he said he was the one who eventually pulled the switch on the project. It was just, we're either going to make this impossible progress in the practicality, or we're going to give up. And eventually they gave up. And then what happened around 1993 is that General Instrument and came out with their digital HDTV system, and immediately killed all the analog proposals completely.
There's also a technique called the Farouche improvement for SDTV. I saw it demonstrated. My boss at the cable company I worked for sent me to see a demonstration, and it may have improved it very, very slightly. I couldn't see much difference. And that was one of the attempts, as I recall, in the step toward high definition television, called Farouche by a guy named Farouche.
Yeah. In the 80s at Zenith, I worked on a outside invention, which is something to very rarely happen, that they would accept a proposal from outside. But I'm trying to remember the guy's name. It'll come to me eventually. But he was the guy who studied the color burst for the NTSC system and showed mathematically that it would work. But he came up with this idea for improving the color resolution. And the idea was that suppose you have a red barn or red rocks, something that's basically all the same color, but it's got texture, light and dark, bright, light and shade, and so forth. And if you had full color resolution, the colored high frequencies and detail would follow the luminance exactly, because that object is all the same color. So he dreamed up the idea of proportioning the luminance detail into the color signal. And this seems wonderful until you discover that there are some images where the color detail and the luminance detail are opposite polarity, and there's no way to know. And we went through a year of building the circuits to do this guy's invention, not having it dawn on us, and definitely not on him, that there would be these bad cases. So we get the set running, and we're looking at some sports program, and there's a US flag hanging vertically with red and white stripes. So the detail in the luminance signal is dark and light and dark and light. The detail in the color, well, there is none in the signal, and the set assumes that the color detail follows luminance. So it makes the white stripes bright pink and makes the red stripes very dark cherry red or black. And you can't unsee that once you do see it. And so we got the whole thing working. We watched a few programs and said, oops. Our contract said we had to supply him a set that worked according to his principles. So we did. We packed it in the station wagon and drove it out to Long Island and said, here's your set. Thank you very much, but we won't be using this.
Oh.
Well, good night, folks. I've got choir tomorrow, so I've got to get into bed. So anyway, you all have a blessed evening there.
Okay.
Thanks for everything.
Right.
Big pretty.
Yeah, thanks. I'll pass on one thing I saw at a swap meet last Sunday that you don't see every day, and that's a Dumont automatic Morse code keyer. And I'll try to show a picture of it. Let's see.
Did you buy it?
Oh.
The guy wanted $250 for it, so no, I didn't buy it. Is that sharing on the screen?
Yes.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah, so it uses a single 117L7 tube, I think. Looked like it. It has a little transformer in it. These, I guess, would be the weight and speed knobs or something, but it's an electronic keyer. It looks like the original Dumont logo. I have no idea the origin of it, neither did the person who had it at the swap meet, but there you have it.
Jeez. Is it still available?
I don't know. I didn't get the guy's name that had it. It was just on a table at an antique radio swap meet in Maryland on Sunday, last week, Sunday. So that's what I saw. So we can unshare now, I guess.
Yeah, I'd like to have seen that in person there.
but as I said, he wanted 250 firm on it.
I didn't know Dumont was into Morse code like that.
Well, who knew? Now
There's a
maybe,
lot of
yeah, who knew? Maybe he was a ham, or somebody on his staff was a ham and built that. Who knows? Maybe a one of a kind.
there's a lot of interesting stuff that's turning up rather lately that, you know, we never heard of 50 years ago, and now it's becoming available now, and that would be worth investigating. That might be a one only or some experimental something. Was that box behind it part of it? Did it say something on the box that it had the serial number or anything like that on the box? Was that part of it?
No, I don't think so. I think it was just other things the guy had for sale on his table.
Well, if it shows up again, get his name and phone number or something like that and get a closer picture if you can. Be interesting to see what it looked like on the inside, if that's possible. Well, anyway, good night, folks. Have a blessed evening.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Sorry, I have a question. I don't know if I can say it.
Sure.
Okay. Well, actually, I am a restorer and a collector of televisions, and I want to know. Well, I do the maintenance of all my sets, my TV sets, and actually, I want to know how I can store better the televisions. So my question is quite simple. I want to, well, behind me I have a Itachi model TV set from the mid 70s, and well, I clean up, I make all the maintenance, I see the joke in good conditions, but I want to save it in a more better condition. I don't know how to say that, but well, how I can save a television in the current form of the way. And that's all my question.
There's a website forum called videokarma.org. If you're not on there, you can jump on there, and that's probably the best discussion group for all things related to television restoration.
Okay, thank you so much. Can you write the web page in the chat, please?
Sure.
Okay, thank you so much.